The tears streamed down Sophia Foster's face as the weight of her father's final words crushed her spirit like the unforgiving sun bearing down on the Texas plains. "No daughter of mine would bring such disgrace upon our family name," he had spat, his finger pointing toward the door of the only home she had ever known. San Antonio, Texas, 1875. The mid-August heat was merciless as Sophia stumbled through the outskirts of San Antonio, her modest traveling bag clutched to her chest like a shield. The shame of her circumstance burned hotter than the Texas sun on her pale skin. At 20 years old, she had never imagined finding herself cast out, homeless, with nowhere to turn and no one to trust. The Foster family had been respected merchants in San Antonio for nearly a decade. Her father, Harold Foster, had built a successful dry goods store through years of careful business dealings and a reputation for honesty. Her mother, Eleanor, maintained their social standing with precision, orchestrating Sophia's path toward a respectable marriage to one of the town's promising young men. That path had crumbled beneath her feet when the whispers began. When Jonathan Blackwood, the banker's son to whom she had been practically promised, spread vicious lies about her virtue after she had rejected his drunken advances. The scandal had spread through town like wildfire, and her father, more concerned with his business reputation than his daughter's truth, had chosen to believe the wealthy young man over his own flesh and blood. Now, with the sun dipping toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the scrubby landscape, Sophia found herself at the edge of Comanche Creek, a small tributary that meandered past the eastern edge of town. Her legs finally gave way beneath her, and she collapsed onto a flat rock overlooking the shallow water. The sound of her sobs mingled with the gentle babble of the creek. With her face buried in her hands, she didn't hear the approach of hoofbeats until they were nearly upon her. "Madam." "You all right there?" The voice was deep, tinged with concern and a slight drawl. Sophia's head snapped up and she hurriedly wiped at her tear-stained cheeks. Pride demanded she compose herself, though she had little left to protect. The man atop the dappled gray horse regarded her with a furrowed brow. He was tall and lean, the kind of toughness that came from hard living etched into every line of his sun-weathered face. His eyes, though, were startlingly kind beneath the wide brim of his dusty Stetson. "I'm fine," she managed, her voice betraying her with a crack. Just resting a moment." The stranger dismounted with the fluid grace of a man who'd spent most of his life in the saddle. He kept a respectful distance, loosely holding his horse's reins. "Don't mean to intrude, madam, but it's getting on toward evening, and this ain't the safest place for a lady to be alone." He gestured vaguely toward her traveling bag. "You look like you might be in some trouble." Sophia straightened her spine, attempting dignity despite her tear-swollen eyes and disheveled appearance. "I'm perfectly capable of handling myself, sir." The man nodded, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. "Never doubted that for a second. Name's Lucas Callahan. I work the Circle D ranch about 10 miles west of here." "Sophia Foster," she replied automatically, then winced as she spoke her family name, a name that had rejected her. Recognition flickered across Lucas's face. "Foster, from Foster's Mercantile." She looked away, fresh tears threatening. "No longer." Lucas studied her for a long moment, taking in her fine, if rumpled, dress, the small bag that clearly held only the barest essentials, and the desolation in her eyes. "Miss Foster," he said gently, "I don't know what's happened, and you don't need to tell me. But night's coming on fast, and you look like you could use a meal and safe place to rest your head." Sophia eyed him warily. A woman alone had to be careful, especially one with no family protection. But there was something in Lucas Callahan's steady gaze that inspired trust despite her better judgment. "Why would you help a stranger?" she asked. He shrugged one shoulder. "Been a stranger myself plenty of times. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to extend a hand." He paused, then added, "Whatever's chasing you, whatever shame folks might be hanging around your neck, that ends here tonight if you want it to." The simple declaration, spoken without fanfare but with absolute conviction, broke something loose inside Sophia's chest. Fresh tears spilled, but these felt different, cleansing rather than bitter. "I haven't done anything wrong," she whispered. "Don't need to explain yourself to me," Lucas replied. "Your business is your own." He gestured toward his horse. "My place is a good ride from here, but there's a widow woman, Mrs. Abernathy, who runs a boarding house just on the edge of town. She's good people. I can take you there, see you settled for the night." Sophia hesitated, weighing her limited options. Night was falling rapidly, and she had nowhere to go. The little money she'd managed to grab before her father threw her out wouldn't last long. "I would appreciate that," she finally said. Lucas nodded and offered his hand to help her up. His palm was calloused but warm against her skin. He led her to his horse, interlacing his fingers to boost her up into the saddle, then swung up behind her, maintaining a respectful distance as much as the saddle allowed. "Hold steady," he instructed, clicking to the horse, who responded with an easy trot. They rode in silence for a while, the gentle rhythm of the horse's gait oddly soothing to Sophia's fractured nerves. The town's scattered buildings came into view as they rounded a bend in the road. "May I ask," Lucas ventured carefully, "if you have any plans for what comes next?" Sophia stared at the approaching town, her former home now feeling as foreign as distant lands she'd only read about in books. "I don't," she admitted. "Until this morning my future seemed." She trailed off, remembering the life she'd expected: marriage to someone suitable, running a household, raising children, all gone now. "Well," Lucas said, "Mrs. Abernathy might know of work. She's connected to most everyone worth knowing in these parts." When they reached the modest boarding house at the town's edge, Lucas helped Sophia down from the horse. The building was small but well-maintained, with a welcoming glow in the windows. "Mrs. Abernathy" answered their knock promptly, her gray hair neatly pinned and her sharp eyes taking in the situation with a single glance. "Lucas Callahan, as I live and breathe. Haven't seen you in town for nearly a month." Her gaze shifted to Sophia. "And who might this be?" "This is Miss Sophia Foster, madam. She's in need of lodging for a spell." Recognition flashed across the older woman's face. "Foster? Harold's girl?" Sophia stiffened, preparing for rejection, but Mrs. Abernathy's expression softened. "Come in, child. You look dead on your feet." Lucas touched the brim of his hat. "I'll leave you in good hands then, Miss Foster." "You're not staying?" Sophia asked, surprising herself with the note of disappointment in her voice. "Got business to attend to," he replied, though his eyes lingered on her face. "But I'll check in on you tomorrow if that's all right. Make sure you're settling in." "I'd like that," Sophia said softly. After Lucas departed, Mrs. Abernathy ushered Sophia inside, set her up with a small but clean room, and brought her a bowl of hearty stew without asking questions. It was only later, as she sat by the kitchen fire with a cup of tea, that the older woman gently probed. "Town's been humming with talk," Mrs. Abernathy said carefully. "That Blackwood boy's been spreading some mighty unkind stories." Sophia's hands tightened around her cup. "They're lies." "Figured as much. That boy's got a meanness in him his fancy clothes can't hide." Mrs. Abernathy patted Sophia's hand. "Your father always was more concerned with appearances than truth. You know my father, honey. I've been in this town 30 years. I know everybody worth knowing and plenty who ain't." She sipped her tea thoughtfully. That Lucas Callahan now, he's good people, quiet sort, keeps to himself mostly but fair and decent to the bone. He was very kind, Sophia agreed. He would be. Man's seen his share of hard times, Mrs. Abernathy set her cup down. Now, as to your situation, I suspect you'll be needing work. Yes, madam, I can sew and I know my letters and figures. My mother made sure I could manage a household properly. The older woman considered. Doc Wilson's been looking for someone to help with his records and such. His practice has grown, and his wife's expecting their third child. Could be he'd take you on. Hope flickered tentatively in Sophia's chest. I'd be grateful for any introduction you might provide. We'll see to it tomorrow, Mrs. Abernathy promised. For now, get some rest. Tomorrow's soon enough to start rebuilding. That night, in the narrow bed of her rented room, Sophia stared at the ceiling, replaying the day's events. The cruel words of her father, the town's whispers, the unexpected kindness of a stranger, Lucas Callahan, with his steady eyes and quiet promise that shame could end. She closed her eyes, letting exhaustion finally claim her. True to his word, Lucas appeared at the boarding house shortly after breakfast the next morning. He'd clearly made an effort with his appearance. His dark hair was neatly combed, his shirt clean though well worn. "Miss Foster," he greeted her, hat in hand. "Hoped I might walk you to the doctor's office. Mrs. Abernathy sent word that you've got an interview." Sophia was touched by the gesture. "That's very kind of you, Mr. Callahan." They walked slowly through the streets of San Antonio, Sophia keeping her eyes forward despite feeling the stares and whispers of townspeople. Lucas seemed oblivious to the attention, or perhaps merely unconcerned by it. "Have you lived in these parts long?" she asked, seeking distraction from the uncomfortable scrutiny. "Going on 5 years now," he replied. "Came west from Tennessee after the war, needed open sky and room to breathe. You fought in the war," a shadow crossed his face. "Last 2 years of it." "Don't much like to talk about those times." "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "No need," he assured her. "Just means I understand something about starting over." He glanced at her. "That's what you're doing now, isn't it?" "I suppose I am," she admitted. "Though I never imagined it would be like this." They reached the doctor's office, a modest building with a shingle proclaiming Dr. Thomas Wilson, physician and surgeon. Lucas paused at the steps. "I've got some business at the feed store," he said. "But I could meet you after your interview if you'd like." Sophia hesitated only briefly. "Yes, I'd like that very much." The interview with Dr. Wilson went better than Sophia had dared hope. The doctor was a kind, harried man in his 40s who seemed relieved at the prospect of organizational help. He either hadn't heard the rumors about her or chose to disregard them. "Mrs. Abernathy says you're good with figures," he said, showing her the chaotic stack of patient records and accounts. "I'm afraid I've let things get rather out of hand." "I can help put these in order," Sophia assured him, already mentally sorting the jumbled papers. "Splendid. When can you start?" "Immediately, if you'd like." And so, by the time Lucas returned 2 hours later, Sophia had secured employment, organized the doctor's filing system, and begun recording patient accounts in a new ledger. "You look pleased," Lucas observed as they walked back toward the boarding house. "Dr. Wilson has hired me," she said, unable to keep the relief from her voice. "It's not much, but it will cover my room and board while I determine what comes next." Lucas nodded approvingly. "Man's lucky to have you. His office has been a mess since I've known him." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, before Lucas cleared his throat. "I've been thinking," he said hesitantly. "Circle D Ticket's owner, Mr. Davidson, is getting on in years. He's been talking about needing someone to help his wife with the household accounts and correspondence." His eyesight's failing and she never learned her letters proper. Sophia glanced at him, curious where this was leading. It'd be steady work, he continued. Room and board included, and it's far enough from town that gossip wouldn't follow you. Are you suggesting I leave San Antonio? The idea was both frightening and strangely appealing. Just putting it out there as a possibility, Lucas said carefully. Town memories can be long, and the Davidsons are good people. I appreciate the thought, Sophia said sincerely, but I've only just secured this position. I should give it a fair chance, I think. Lucas nodded, understanding in his eyes. Of course, just wanted you to know there are options. Over the next 2 weeks, Sophia settled into a routine. She worked diligently at the doctor's office, returned to her room at the boarding house, and took her meals with Mrs. Abernathy and the other boarders, a traveling salesman and an elderly schoolteacher. She carefully avoided the main streets where she might encounter her family or Jonathan Blackwood. Lucas visited regularly, sometimes bringing small gifts, a book he thought she might enjoy, fresh peaches from a farm outside town, a handkerchief he'd seen at the general store that reminded him of her eyes. Their friendship grew easily, his quiet strength a balm to her wounded spirit. But the sanctuary Sophia had found was fragile. One afternoon, as she was returning to the boarding house, she rounded a corner and came face to face with her mother. Sophia Foster looked older somehow, though it had been less than a month since Sophia had seen her. For a moment, mother and daughter simply stared at each other, the busy street flowing around them like a river around two stones. Sophia, her mother finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Mother. Sophia fought to keep her voice steady. Eleanor glanced around nervously, clearly concerned about being seen with her disgraced daughter. You look well. I am well, Sophia replied, though her heart was pounding. I have employment with Dr. Wilson. Your father would not approve of you working. My father made his position clear when he cast me out. Eleanor flinched at the bluntness. He was upset. The things people were saying were lies, Sophia interrupted, her voice finally breaking. How could you believe I would do such things? How could you not defend me? Her mother's eyes filled with tears. Your father is more concerned with appearances than truth. Yes, I've come to understand that. Sophia straightened her shoulders. I should go. Sophia, please, good day, mother. Sophia walked away, her back rigid with the effort of not running. She made it to the boarding house and up to her room before the tears came, hot and furious. The encounter had reopened wounds she'd thought were beginning to heal. That evening, when Lucas called, Mrs. Abernathy directed him straight to Sophia's room, breaking her usual rule about gentlemen callers. She's had a difficult day, the older woman murmured. Ran into her mother in town. Understanding darkened Lucas's expression as he knocked gently on Sophia's door. It's Lucas, he called softly. May I speak with you? After a moment, the door opened. Sophia's eyes were red-rimmed, but she'd composed herself. I'm sorry to trouble you, she said. You're no trouble, he assured her. Mrs. Abernathy mentioned you had a difficult encounter today. Sophia nodded, stepping back to allow him into the small room. It wasn't entirely proper, but she found she cared little for propriety at that moment. I saw my mother, she said, sinking onto the edge of the bed while Lucas took the room's single chair. She acted as though seeing me was somehow shameful, as though I'm the one who did something wrong. I'm sorry, Lucas said, genuine compassion in his voice. That must have been painful. The worst part is, Sophia continued, her voice breaking, a part of me still wants their approval. Isn't that foolish after everything? It's not foolish to want love from those who should give it freely, Lucas said quietly. But sometimes we have to find family in unexpected places. Sophia looked up, meeting his gaze. Like Mrs. Abernathy, he he agreed with a small smile. Like friends who see your worth, even when those who should know better have forgotten. The warmth in his eyes as he said this sent a flutter through Sophia's chest. In that moment, she realized her feelings for Lucas had grown beyond simple gratitude or friendship. "Thank you," she said softly, "for being one of those friends." Lucas leaned forward slightly. "Sophia," he began, then hesitated. "I've been meaning to ask if you might." A knock at the door interrupted him. Mrs. Abernathy poked her head in. "Sorry to intrude, but there's someone downstairs asking for you, Sophia. Says it's urgent." Downstairs, they found Dr. Wilson pacing anxiously in the parlor. "Miss Foster, thank goodness. There's been an accident at the lumber mill. Several men injured. I need your assistance." "Of course," Sophia said immediately. "Let me get my shawl." Lucas stepped forward. "I'll come too. Might be able to help." The scene at the lumber mill was chaotic. A saw had broken, sending metal fragments flying. 3 men had been injured, one severely. Dr. Wilson worked feverishly to stem the bleeding from a deep gash in the chest of a young worker, while directing Sophia to clean and bandage the less serious wounds of the others. Lucas proved invaluable, his strong hands steady as he helped hold patients still, fetched water, and eventually carried the most seriously injured man to a wagon for transport to the doctor's surgery. It was well past midnight when they finally finished. The critically injured worker had been stabilized, though his future remained uncertain. Sophia's dress was stained with blood, her hair falling from its pins, but a sense of accomplishment filled her. She had been useful, perhaps even helped save lives. "You did well tonight, Doctor," Wilson told her as they locked up the surgery. "Very well indeed. Have you considered training in medicine? We need more capable women in the healing arts." The suggestion startled Sophia. "I hadn't thought of it." "Think about it," the doctor urged. "You have a natural aptitude. Now, get some rest. I won't expect you until noon tomorrow." Lucas had waited patiently through it all and now walked beside her through the deserted streets. The night was cool, stars brilliant overhead in the vast Texas sky. "The doctor's right," Lucas said after a while. "You were remarkable tonight." Sophia felt a blush warm her cheeks. "I simply did what was needed." "That's what makes it remarkable." He glanced at her, his expression serious in the moonlight. "Not everyone can keep their head in a crisis. Not everyone can set aside their own comfort to help others." They reached the boarding house, but neither seemed eager to end the night. They stood on the porch, the distant sound of cicadas filling the comfortable silence between them. "What were you going to ask me?" Sophia finally said. "Before we were interrupted earlier." Lucas looked down, suddenly seeming uncharacteristically nervous. "I was going to ask if you might consider joining me for a proper supper sometime. Not just walking together or talking at the boarding house, but, well, more like a courtship call." Sophia's heart quickened. "I'd like that very much." The smile that spread across Lucas's face made her breath catch. "Tomorrow evening then. I know a place just outside town that serves a fine steak. Tomorrow would be perfect." As promised, Lucas arrived the following evening in a borrowed buggy, dressed in his best clothes which were still work-worn but clean and pressed. He'd even gotten a haircut, Sophia noticed with a flutter of pleasure. The restaurant was small but charming, with checkered tablecloths and candles casting a warm glow. It was far enough from town that they weren't likely to encounter gossip mongers, but close enough for a comfortable drive. Over their meal, Lucas finally shared more of his past. He had indeed fought for the Confederacy, though more out of geographical loyalty than ideological conviction. "Lost my older brother at Shiloh," he said quietly. "Came home to find our farm in ruins. Parents both passed from fever while I was away." He pushed food around his plate. "Drifted west afterward, Couldn't stand the ghosts back home. I'm sorry, Sophia said, reaching across to touch his hand briefly. He turned his palm up, catching her fingers in his. Found peace out here. Sky's bigger somehow, makes a man's troubles seem smaller. Is that why you stayed in San Antonio? Partly. His thumb traced gentle circles on the back of her hand. Found work I'm good at, people I respect. Like the Davidsons, they're good folk, treat their hands fair. Mr. Davidson taught me most of what I know about cattle. They talked for hours, the candles burning low as they shared stories and discovered shared interests, a love of reading, a preference for sunrise over sunset, a sweet tooth for peach cobbler. On the drive back, Lucas took a meandering route that offered a view of the town lights spread below them. He pulled the buggy to a stop on a small rise. It's beautiful, Sophia murmured, looking out over the twinkling lamps of San Antonio. Yes, Lucas agreed, though his eyes were on her, not the view. When he leaned toward her, she met him halfway. The kiss was gentle, tentative at first, then deepening as she responded. His hand came up to cup her cheek, rough calluses against soft skin. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. I've been wanting to do that since I found you by Comanche Creek. I'm glad you waited until tonight, she replied with a smile. It made it more special. In the weeks that followed, their courtship blossomed. They took drives in the country on Lucas's days off from the ranch, shared suppers at Mrs. Abernathy's table, and once even attended a traveling show that had set up on the outskirts of town. Lucas was respectful, never presuming, but the attraction between them grew steadily stronger. Sophia flourished in her work at the doctor's office. Dr. Wilson began teaching her basic medical skills, how to clean and dress wounds, administer common remedies, even assist with minor surgeries. The work gave her purpose and pride she'd never known in her previous life of social calls and needlework, but the shadow of her family's rejection still hung over her. One afternoon, nearly 2 months after her banishment, Jonathan Blackwood appeared at the doctor's office while Dr. Wilson was out on a house call. Well, he drawled, leaning against the doorframe. If it isn't Miss Sophia Foster playing at being useful. Sophia stiffened, her hand stilling on the patient records she'd been organizing. Mr. Blackwood, the doctor is out. You'll need to return later if you require medical attention. Oh, I'm not here for the sawbones. He sauntered into the office, closing the door behind him. The action sent alarm bells ringing in Sophia's mind. I came to see you. She stood, putting the desk between them. I have nothing to say to you. That's rather ungrateful, considering I've been thinking of a way to restore your reputation. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Your father approached me yesterday. Seems he's concerned about the family name, what with his only daughter living in disgrace. My father spoke to you. The betrayal cut deep. He suggested that despite your indiscretions, you might still make a suitable wife, with the right husband to keep you in line, of course. Rage surged through Sophia at Jonathan's smugness, at her father's continued manipulation, at the casual cruelty of men who viewed women as property to be bartered. I would rather live in disgrace for the rest of my days than spend 1 hour as your wife, she said, her voice low and steady. Now please leave. Jonathan's face darkened. You're a fool, Sophia. You think that cowboy of yours is going to marry you, a woman with a ruined reputation. He's just amusing himself until something better comes along. Get out, Sophia repeated, her hand inching toward the letter opener on the desk. Jonathan moved suddenly, circling the desk before she could react. He grabbed her wrist, yanking her toward him. Your father may have given permission, but I don't need it. When I'm done with you, you'll be begging for my offer. Before he could do more, the office door crashed open. Lucas stood there, his expression murderous as he took in the scene. "Take your hands off her," he said, his voice deceptively quiet. Jonathan sneered but released Sophia's wrist. "Well, if it isn't the ranch hand. Come to defend your soiled goods." Lucas moved so fast Sophia barely saw it. One moment Jonathan was smirking, the next he was pinned against the wall, Lucas's forearm pressed against his throat. "Apologize to the lady," Lucas demanded. Jonathan's face was turning red, his eyes bulging. "Go to hell," he choked out. Lucas pressed harder. "Apologize or I swear I'll break every bone in your body." "Lucas, stop," Sophia urged, concerned by the rage in his eyes. "He's not worth it." For a moment she thought Lucas might not listen. Then he abruptly released Jonathan, who slumped against the wall, gasping. "You're right," Lucas said, stepping back. "He's not worth it. But you should know, Blackwood, that if you ever come near Miss Foster again, if you ever speak her name, if you so much as look in her direction, what happens next won't be stopped by anyone." Jonathan straightened, adjusting his rumpled clothing. "You'll regret this," he spat. "Both of you." He stalked to the door, pausing to add, "And Foster, your father will hear about this. Any chance of reconciliation is gone." After he left, Lucas turned to Sophia. "Are you all right? Did he hurt you?" She shook her head, though her wrist ached where Jonathan had gripped it. "How did you know to come?" "I didn't," Lucas admitted. "I was in town for supplies and thought I'd stop by to see if you wanted to have lunch." His expression darkened. "What did he want?" Sophia explained about Jonathan's visit and her father's apparent matchmaking attempt. Lucas listened, his jaw tightening with each word. "I'll never understand how a father could treat his daughter so," he said when she'd finished. "Trying to marry you off to that snake." "It doesn't matter," Sophia said, though the hurt was evident in her voice. "I've made my choice. I'm building a new life without them." Lucas took her hands in his. "Sophia, I know we haven't known each other long, but I need to say something." Her heart skipped a beat at the seriousness in his tone. "Yes, I love you," he said simply. "I think I've loved you since that first day by the creek. I know I don't have much to offer, just a ranch hand's wages and a rented room at the bunkhouse. But I swear I'd spend every day trying to make you happy." Tears filled Sophia's eyes, but these were tears of joy, not sorrow. "Oh, Lucas, I love you too." The kiss they shared sealed those words, a promise and a beginning. That evening they sat together on Mrs. Abernathy's porch swing, discussing their future. The confrontation with Jonathan had made clear that San Antonio held too many painful connections for Sophia. "I've been thinking about Dr. Wilson's suggestion," she said, leaning against Lucas's shoulder, "about medical training." "You'd be wonderful at it," Lucas encouraged. "You have a natural gift for healing." "There's a women's medical college in Philadelphia," she continued. "Dr. Wilson mentioned it, but it's so far away and the expense." Lucas was quiet for a moment. "I've been saving," he finally said. "Not much, but enough for a fresh start. Maybe we could go east together. I could find work while you studied." Sophia sat up, searching his face. "You do that? Leave Texas?" "I'd follow you anywhere," he said simply. "Besides, there's cattle in Pennsylvania too, or horses. I'm good with both." The magnitude of what he was offering struck her deeply. "But your life here, the Davidsons, they'd understand." "Mr. Davidson's been talking about selling up anyway. His son's coming from back east to take over." Hope blossomed in Sophia's heart, a future she'd never imagined, with work that fulfilled her and a man who loved her enough to build his life around her dreams. "We could marry before we go," Lucas suggested hesitantly, "if you wanted, or wait if you prefer." Sophia's answer was another kiss, soft and sure. "I don't want to wait," she whispered against his lips. 2 weeks later, they were married in a simple ceremony at the small church on the edge of town. Dr. Wilson gave the bride away, Mrs. Abernathy wept joyfully, and Mr. Davidson surprised them with a generous wedding gift, enough money to establish themselves comfortably in Philadelphia, while Sophia pursued her studies. "Always knew you were meant for more than ranch work, Lucas," the old rancher said gruffly. "You've got a good head on your shoulders, and this young lady's got fire in her spirit. You'll do well together." The night before they were to leave for the East, Lucas took Sophia to the spot by Comanche Creek where they'd first met. The summer heat had given way to the gentler warmth of early autumn, and the setting sun painted the sky in spectacular shades of orange and purple. "Seems fitting to come back here," Lucas said, his arm around his wife's waist. "Full circle." Sophia nodded, leaning into his embrace. "I was so lost that day, so broken. And now," she turned in his arms, looking up at the face she'd grown to love so deeply. "Now I'm found, healed." Lucas brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Remember what I told you that first day, about shame dying?" "You said it dies here tonight," she recalled. "I meant it then, and I mean it now." He took her hands in his. "Whatever life brings us, Sophia Callahan, there will never be shame between us, only truth and trust. And love," she added, rising on her toes to kiss him. "Always love." The journey east was long but filled with discovery. For Sophia, who had never traveled beyond the borders of Texas, each new town and landscape was a revelation. Lucas took delight in her excitement, his own spirits lifting as they put distance between themselves and the painful memories of San Antonio. Philadelphia, in 1876, was a city transformed by the nation's centennial celebrations. Grand exhibitions showcased technological marvels and cultural achievements from around the world. For a young couple from the Texas frontier, it was overwhelming and exhilarating. They found lodgings in a modest but respectable neighborhood near the Women's Medical College. Lucas secured work at a livery stable owned by a former cavalryman who appreciated his knowledge of horses, while Sophia began her medical studies with passionate dedication. The transition wasn't without challenges. The rigors of medical education tested Sophia's endurance and resolve. There were nights she came home exhausted, doubting her abilities. Lucas never wavered in his support, making sure she ate properly, listening as she recited anatomical terms, even quizzing her from textbooks he could barely understand himself. "I don't know how you keep all these Latin words straight in your head," he said one night, struggling with the pronunciation of gastrocnemius. "Says the man who can identify every horse ailment known to mankind," she teased, taking the book from him. "We all have our areas of expertise." "True enough," he agreed, pulling her into his lap. "My expertise is making my brilliant wife smile when she's been studying too hard." His methods of distraction were most effective, and Sophia found that even on her most challenging days, coming home to Lucas restored her equilibrium and renewed her determination. For Lucas, the adjustment to city life was more difficult. He missed open spaces and star-filled skies. The constant noise and press of people sometimes left him feeling trapped. But he found satisfaction in his work, earning the respect of his employer and customers alike with his gentle way with difficult horses. "That gray stallion settled down mighty quick for you," his boss observed after Lucas had successfully shod a horse others had deemed impossible. "Got a real gift. Just patience," Lucas replied. "And respect. Horses know when you respect them." "People too," the older man said shrewdly. "Seen how folks respond to you. Might want to think about your own place someday. You do well." The seed of an idea took root in Lucas's mind, not immediately, but gradually. A stable of his own, perhaps outside the city where there was more space. A place where Sophia could eventually establish a medical practice. A home where they could raise a family. As Sophia progressed through her studies, her confidence grew. Her professors noted her exceptional abilities, particularly in surgery where her steady hands and calm focus set her apart. "You have a rare combination of intelligence and compassion, Mrs. Callahan," the dean told her after she had successfully assisted in a difficult procedure. "Medicine needs more practitioners like you." In their second year in Philadelphia, they received unexpected news from San Antonio. Mrs. Abernathy wrote that Harold Foster had suffered a devastating stroke. He was partially paralyzed and unable to speak. The business was struggling under Aliner's inexperienced management. "Your mother inquires about you," Mrs. Abernathy wrote. "Though she has not said so directly, I believe she regrets her role in your estrangement." Sophia read the letter multiple times, conflicting emotions churning within her. Lucas watched her carefully, understanding the gravity of the situation. "What are you thinking?" he asked gently. She looked up from the letter. "I don't know. Part of me feels they deserve whatever hardship comes their way after how they treated me, but another part still loves them," Lucas finished, "because they're family." Sophia nodded, tears gathering. "Is that weakness?" "To still care despite everything, it's humanity," Lucas said, taking her hand. "The question is, what do you want to do about it?" She considered for a long moment. "I can't go back. Not yet. I have my studies and we've built a life here." "We could write," Lucas suggested. "Offer financial help if they need it." "You do that?" After how they rejected me, Lucas's expression was serious. "I'd do anything that brings you peace, Sophia. Besides, hatred's a heavy burden to carry. Maybe it's time to set it down." The letter they composed together was straightforward but not unkind. They offered assistance if needed and included their address should Aliner wish to write directly. It was an olive branch, extended without expectation. 3 weeks later, a response arrived not from Aliner, but from Sophia's younger sister, Margaret, whom she hadn't seen since the day she was cast out. "Mother won't admit it," Margaret wrote, "but she weeps over your letter when she thinks no one is looking. Father's condition worsens daily. The doctors say he may not last the winter. I know he wronged you terribly, Sophia, but he is still our father. Is there any possibility you might come home, even briefly, before it's too late?" The letter arrived as Sophia was preparing for her final examinations before clinical rotations. The timing couldn't have been worse for a journey to Texas. "You should go," Lucas said after she shared Margaret's letter. "Your studies can wait if necessary." "But we've worked so hard to get here," Sophia protested, "and I'm not sure I'm ready to face them." "You're stronger than you know," Lucas reminded her. "And some things can't wait. If your father passes without reconciliation, you might regret it forever." After careful consideration, Sophia arranged a leave of absence from her studies. Lucas couldn't leave his position for an extended period, so they decided she would make the journey alone, staying for no more than 3 weeks. The train ride to Texas gave Sophia ample time to reflect on the changes in her life since she'd left San Antonio nearly 3 years earlier. The heartbroken girl crying by Comanche Creek seemed like someone from another lifetime. Now she was Sophia Callahan, medical student, beloved wife, a woman with purpose and direction. Margaret met her at the station, the sisters embracing tearfully. At 20, Margaret had grown into a poised young woman, though shadows of worry darkened her eyes. "You look wonderful," Margaret said, studying her older sister. "So confident." "I am," Sophia replied simply. "Life has been good to me despite how it began." The Foster family home was much as Sophia remembered, though it felt smaller somehow. Aliner greeted her daughter with trembling hands and red-rimmed eyes. "Sophia," she whispered, "you came." "Yes, Mother," Sophia said, accepting Aliner's tentative embrace. "I came." Her father's condition was indeed grave. Confined to bed, his once robust frame had withered. The right side of his face drooped, and his eyes, though alert, could no longer communicate the thoughts behind them. Sophia approached his bedside with steady steps, medical training automatically assessing his symptoms even as emotional turmoil churned within her. "Hello, Father," she said, taking his left hand, the one that still had feeling. "It's Sophia." His fingers tightened weakly around hers. A tear slid from the corner of his eye. "He understands," Alina said from the doorway. "The doctors say his mind is still intact, though he cannot speak." For the next 2 weeks, Sophia divided her time between caring for her father, whose medical needs she understood better than the local physician, and helping Margaret sort through the business records. The mercantile was indeed struggling, mismanaged in Harold's absence and undermined by competitors who had seized the opportunity. "We may have to sell," Margaret admitted one evening as they reviewed the ledgers. "There's simply too much debt." "What will you and Mother do?" Sophia asked. "Mother has a small inheritance from her parents, enough to live modestly. I've been offered a position teaching at the school." Margaret hesitated. "We'll manage." Sophia heard the unspoken worry in her sister's voice. "Lucas and I could help if needed." Margaret looked surprised. "After everything, family is complicated," Sophia said with a small smile, "but it's still family." On her third night home, Sophia sat alone with her father while Alina and Margaret attended a church service. In the quiet room, lit only by a single lamp, she finally spoke the words that had been building within her. "I was so angry with you, Father, for believing lies over your own daughter, for valuing your reputation above my truth." She stroked his thin hand. "I wanted to hate you. Sometimes I did." His eyes, fixed on her face, filled with tears. "But hatred is exhausting," she continued, "and it leaves no room for healing. I've built a good life, a wonderful life with a man who values me completely. I'm becoming a doctor, Father. Can you imagine that? Your rebellious daughter, a physician." A faint pressure from his fingers encouraged her to continue. "I forgive you," she said finally. "Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace, and because I believe, despite everything, that you loved me in your way." The next morning, Harold Foster passed peacefully in his sleep, his hand held between his wife's and eldest daughter's. Though grief was present, there was also a sense of completion, of wounds beginning to heal. After the funeral, Sophia helped her mother and sister finalize arrangements for the sale of the mercantile and the family home. They would move to a smaller house that Margaret had found near the school. "Will you visit again?" Alina asked, as Sophia prepared to return to Philadelphia. "Or perhaps we could come east someday." "I'd like that," Sophia said sincerely. "And when I've completed my training, perhaps Lucas and I will settle somewhere you could visit easily." "He sounds like a remarkable man," Alina said hesitantly. "From your letters, I wish we had known him under different circumstances." "You'll meet him," Sophia promised. "And yes, he is remarkable. He taught me that shame has no power unless we give it power." The reunion with Lucas at the Philadelphia station was joyous, their embrace lingering despite the curious glances of passers-by. "Welcome home," he murmured against her hair. "I've missed you something fierce." "I've missed you more," she replied, drinking in the sight of him. "But I'm glad I went. There's peace now where there was only hurt before." That night, as they lay together in their small but comfortable bed, Sophia shared a decision she had reached during her journey home. "I want us to have a family," she said, her head resting on Lucas's chest. "Not immediately. I want to complete my training first, but afterward." Lucas's arms tightened around her. "I'd like that very much. A little girl with your spirit and intelligence, or a boy with your compassion. Would you mind if I practiced medicine even after we have children?" The question revealed a lingering insecurity. Mind. Lucas propped himself up to look at her properly. Sophia, your healing gift is part of who you are. I would never ask you to set it aside. We'll find a way to make it work together. Sophia completed her medical training with honors in the spring of 1880. By then, Lucas had indeed established his own livery business on the outskirts of Philadelphia, earning a reputation for exceptional horsemanship and fair dealing. Dr. Callahan, he said proudly after her graduation ceremony, twirling her around despite the formal setting, has a fine ring to it. They celebrated that night with friends they'd made during their years in the city, fellow medical students, clients from Lucas's stable, neighbors who had become like family. It was a joyous occasion, but also bittersweet, as they had decided to leave Philadelphia. I've had an offer, Sophia explained to her mentor, Dr. Elizabeth Blackwell, who had taken a special interest in her career. A position with a small hospital in Denver. They need surgeons and they're willing to accept a woman physician. Colorado, Dr. Blackwell nodded thoughtfully. Growing rapidly, I understand. You'll have ample opportunity to establish yourself. And Lucas misses the West, Sophia added. The open spaces. He's been so supportive of my dreams, it seems right to consider his needs now. Balance is essential in a marriage, the older woman agreed. And Denver is progressive enough that your skills will be valued. You've chosen well, I think. Denver in 1880 was a city in transformation, growing rapidly from its mining camp origins into a sophisticated urban center, while still maintaining its frontier character. For Lucas and Sophia, it offered the perfect blend of opportunity and familiarity. They purchased land on the city's edge, where Lucas established a breeding stable for quality horses, while Sophia joined the staff at St. Luke's Hospital. The work was demanding but fulfilling, and they quickly integrated into Denver's community. Elena and Margaret visited that first Christmas, the awkwardness of their initial reunion gradually giving way to genuine warmth. Lucas, true to his nature, showed only kindness to his mother-in-law, never mentioning the pain of the past. I understand now why Sophia loves you so deeply, Elena told him one evening as they watched Sophia and Margaret decorating the Christmas tree. You see the best in people, even when they haven't earned it. Everyone deserves a second chance, Lucas replied simply, and family is too precious to lose over pride. In the spring of 1882, Sophia discovered she was expecting their first child. The pregnancy was uncomplicated, though she continued working at the hospital until her 8th month, determined to fulfill her responsibilities to her patients. You're the most stubborn woman I've ever known, Lucas told her with affectionate exasperation after finding her on her feet for hours during a difficult surgery. The other doctors can manage without you for a few weeks. Just a few more days, she promised. Dr. Harrison returns from Boston next week. Then I'll rest, I swear. Their son, Samuel Harold Callahan, was born on a crisp October morning, healthy, strong-lunged, and with his father's dark hair and his mother's determined chin. Sophia fell in love instantly, as did Lucas, who seemed unable to put the baby down for the first week of his life. He's perfect, Lucas whispered, watching his son sleep in the cradle he had crafted himself. Absolutely perfect. Motherhood brought new challenges and joys for Sophia. She had worried that her medical career might suffer, but with Lucas's unwavering support and a nurse they hired to help when both parents were working, she found a balance that suited their family. 2 years later, their daughter Emma Elena joined the family, completing their happiness. The children grew up surrounded by love, horses, and the occasional medical textbook, a unique upbringing that produced confident, compassionate individuals. San Antonio remained part of their past, visited occasionally when Alina and Margaret moved back after Margaret's marriage to a local businessman. The pain of those early days had faded, replaced by the rich tapestry of the life Lucas and Sophia had built together. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Lucas surprised Sophia with a journey back to Comanche Creek. The town had changed significantly in the intervening years, but the creek itself remained much as it had been the day they met. "You remember what I said to you here?" Lucas asked, his hair now flecked with gray but his eyes as kind as ever. "You said shame dies here tonight," Sophia replied, her hand warm in his. "And you were right. It did." "Best words I ever spoke," he said, drawing her close. "Though I love you and I do are close contenders." Sophia laughed, the sound carrying across the water where they had once begun their journey together, a journey that had taken them through hardship and joy, across distance and time, to the rich and loving life they now shared. "Shame dies, but love endures," she said softly, resting her head against his shoulder as the Texas sun set behind them, painting the sky in the same brilliant hues that had witnessed their beginning. "Always and forever." "Always and forever," Lucas echoed, sealing the words with a kiss as timeless as the land around them and as enduring as the love that had healed them both.